Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
From U.S.-China relations and the Mueller Probe to Parkland shootings and tensions over immigration, there's certainly no shortage of news in 2018. Our team's going to break down the most significant events and review some of the things that you may have missed if you weren't watching for them. And we've got an incredibly special guest today, a returning guest star. I don't think he's been on at all since we renamed The State of Us. So it's been a few years, but we're pleased to welcome back Mike Mays, still in public education and worked alongside the famous redneck liberal for, many, many years. So how many years in public education now, Mike?
This is 32.
32. Has it been a ride?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
thanks for being here. We're excited to talk to you today about all this stuff. And we're gonna get to why do you care about any of these things and what happened in 2018 and all this stuff. But of course, we can't begin any conversation without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Been another year?
It's been another year.
Man.
It flies.
And Mike, he's never leaving. He told me he's going for 45.
I don't think so.
32 is just, he's still a babe in the woods. He's a pup.
Okay.
He's going to keep going after it. So I'm glad he took the time to come and talk to us.
Come spend some time
in
with
his
us.
Busy academic schedule.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes. So why do we care, Lance? Well, a number of these stories are still developing, and they'll certainly have a significant impact on the coming year, both politically and financially. Any other reasons that we care to look back at what is now history? We've got two history teachers in the room, right? So there should be some case here for why history matters.
Well, hopefully so we can get out in front of some of the things that could happen this year and either direct them to happen the way we want them to happen or to stop them before they get too out of control. That's one reason why you take a look. Why, but you don't want to look behind you too much because somebody might be gaining on you. There was somebody that said that once. That was a famous saying by somebody.
Okay.
You don't want to look behind you because somebody might be gaining on you.
You got that name for us on the famous quote?
Give you a minute. I think it was a baseball player.
Okay.
I think it was Satchel Paige. Said, I don't want to look back because somebody might be gaining on me.
Okay.
Famous pitcher in the Negro leagues and then in the major leagues in his 40s.
Gotcha.
But
okay,
I didn't really have that one. It's just one of those things that,
yeah.
I got another old guy in the room. My old brain starts working. I pull out a Satchel Paige reference, I think.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot of things to get through, so we're going to try to keep it pretty tight on each one, do a brief overview, and then get right into what, if anything, can be done about it in the future. So let's start with partisanship deepens across the nation. Obviously, the midterms led us to see that the Democrats seized control of the House. However, they didn't realize that bit of a pipe dream maybe in recapturing the Senate. So now we're headed into a new year, split government. And really the past 2 years, it hasn't felt like Congress has got a lot done other than our tax overhaul. It doesn't feel like as much happened maybe as the American people were initially promised. So now that things have changed and we've got a split government, is there any chance that things might actually move and we might see some more stuff getting done, like maybe address healthcare now? What do you think, Mike?
I don't see much changing. In my opinion, you're just going to have it's just going to be more partisan divide, and it's just going to be the same thing that happened under President Obama the last couple of years. I know that, even though you got the president with the art of the deal and all that sort of stuff, I can't see him really sitting down and trying to get any type of major legislation passed, because the Democrats are going to see it one way, the Republicans are going to see it the other, and I just don't see them working together, and that hurts us all. And that's one of the things that just drives me crazy is, it's just going to be more of the same as far as like you go back to the last 2 or several years, as far as with Obama and trying to work with the Republicans, and the Republicans wouldn't move. And now I see it as the Democrats will be in that position and they're not going to move on a lot of the things that he wants.
So before we get to Lance here, because Lance has that lovely intro, one of his gems from being on so long, and he also gets labeled immediately at the beginning of the show. So you want to give listeners a little insight on your political philosophies and leanings?
Well, I consider myself to be a conservative. I know he's got the redneck liberal. I grew up in an area where I maybe a little more redneckish. But I'm not totally one-sided as far as seeing things. I try to view things as more of a moderate. But like I said, I do have conservative leanings, but I try to be open-minded, try to listen to both sides. So maybe as far as voting, I try to look at the candidate, not the party. So which that tends for me to be more Republican, just because I try to look at all the issues and how they stack up on issues.
Tell you what, Lance, it was almost like there for a second he was reading the mission statement.
He wasn't looking that way though.
No? Oh. Okay. So, Lance, what do you think? Do we have it? Now, in fairness to Mike, right, he's not as up to speed on the speaker project, but we'll get to that later. So
he still could be right, though.
Right. I mean, regardless of it, it still could be right. What do you think? What's your thoughts here?
About
our first topic here, partisanship deepens, and whether or not anything's going to change now that the government's split, as opposed to being, air quotes here for you all listening at home, now that the government is no longer united under a single
There are
front.
two things that I'm going to be looking for. One is how much success is the president going to try to fill any of the vacated positions in his cabinet? Because I think him being out there on his own is not a good proposition for him or for the country. But who's he going to find to replace these people that have either been fired or have left? And what will that do for the country? And then two, how much will he play to his base, or as Mike mentioned, the art of the deal? Will he, because we know the president has given money to both sides when he was a builder in New York, and that some of his earlier days he was more leaning Democratic. So will he try to make some deals, or will he go into 2020 with his 35% and see if he can win it again? Mm-hmm. And I said a month ago, I don't see him running for reelection. But in one of his tweets this week, he said, hey, we're going to set this up, make Pelosi look bad, and then we're going to win reelection in 2020. I can't see him doing what happened to President Obama and then wanting to be reelected. I think Trump is so frustrated when he can't get something done. He's so used to being in charge of a project, and he gets his way or he moves on. I can't see him sitting through 2 years of stagnation and not being able to get anything done. But maybe I'll be wrong, but that's where I see this going. Who's he going to put around him, and will he really run for reelection in 2020 if he can't get any deals made?
I guess I'd say I'm hopeful. But that's, Lance can tell you, right? Eternal optimist here at this point, we've had the same kind of rules for so long that make it really difficult for the common ground to do much, that really, even though there's a lot of lawmakers who I think are probably willing to compromise, like, for example, when we had Ryan Clancy, chief strategist at No Labels on, he reviewed with us that over the past 4 years, so the last 2 years of Obama and the first 2 years of Trump, we had bipartisan bills that had a majority or almost a majority of support in the Senate and the House that would have reformed health care, reformed immigration, and tackled entitlement programs. And we never heard much about them, and they never got anywhere because leadership at the top felt the pressure from those fringe groups on the sides, those groups of 5, 10, 15, 20 people that ultimately were giving an outsized amount of power over everybody else, because they could influence that. So we'll talk about that more later, but I guess I'd say, is it going to change? I sure hope so. Do I think it's likely? Lance, I'll say it's more likely than not. How's that? Okay.
Do you think the president will sign anything that comes to him that's counter to what he said?
I think that what are your chances for that to happen? Based on his track record of changing what he says, I think there's a decent chance that if he thinks he can spin it in a, positive enough light, then I think he does. And I don't mean that in a facetious or like a bad way at all. I just mean it in, I think what we talked about before is we know he likes to put stuff out there and kind of field test it, see how the public reacts. And then if it's
what Laura Ingraham says or.
Yeah. Okay. And then if it's a positive reaction, we push harder on it. And if it's a negative reaction, then we tweak it some and modify it. It's kind of this, without the rigmarole of official polling, it is a polling method that the president implores to kind of make these decisions on. Does the base like what I've said? And if they don't, then I pull back some and I get, it's a Syria troop thing, right? It was, we're pulling out 2,000 troops. It's going to happen fast and we're going to get out of there. And then broad backlash, both sides. And now it's, we're going to have a really deliberate plan. It's going to be slow. It's not going to be very fast. So the end goal is still the same thing, but the way we get there and what it looks like when it's done changes. So yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable. I would not be shocked, put it that way, if he starts signing a bunch of stuff that comes his way, because I think it's more about, I got stuff done, I made your life better, than it is about, I got this thing done. Other than it seems like the wall, I guess, is that's like his, got to get that done thing. Because we're shutting down the government over it, right? So.
Well, the thing that I see is the lack of compromise. You said something about, those fringe groups. And whenever you have the Democrats, they're going to take their hard line. You have the Republicans, are going to take their hard line with President Trump, saying, hey, we're going to get the wall, no matter what, we'll shut down the government. We'll get the wall. All of that sort of thing. But another thing, you said something about how some of these members of Congress, they kind of tend to go with these fringe groups. Well, something that I think maybe needs to be done is, what about term limits? We have term limits as far as with the president. We have some of these Congress members that have been in there for so long. They tend to listen to those fringe groups. What if they didn't have to worry about them? You have presidents whenever, and I kept saying as far as with President Obama in the last couple of years, he was a lame duck. And as far as being a lame duck, he didn't have to worry as far as politically how that was going to look to those fringes, or how it was going to look to maybe more of the liberal base, or however you want to look at it. I think maybe that might be something that we need to look at.
There's definitely, and it's funny because it literally, as you started talking about that, I was going through my head what Lance's answer was going to be here. Because we've done now. We're going, I'm not sure if we've passed the 600 episode mark, Lance, but it's coming up here soon. So we've talked about, I think, pretty much everything at one point or another, and sometimes multiple things. We had a great show. It was probably a year and a half ago. Camden was on that one, where we talked about term limits, the pros and the cons of it. And so we won't dive into it right now, but we got to do something because, obviously, the speaker rules is an example of at least trying to alleviate some of that pressure that our leaders feel, where they get chained to these, fringe groups, and they don't have as much, or they don't feel like, it's that whole thing. They have the freedom. They can do it. It just means that they might not get reelected, or they might not get done what they want to do.
They should be doing what's right. They shouldn't be worrying about all of this. And as far as, making everything as far as extreme right or extreme left, doing what's right for the American people is what should be done. And that, to me, we've gone further and further away from that. And that's what frustrates us.
Absolutely. So we'll give you a little more info on the speaker project later, but we're moving on now. The Mueller Probe continues. This has been dragging on now for quite some time. I think part of the fatigue probably that some people feel in relation to this is that The media is, and again, I'm clarifying here because Lance and I had this episode where I had this nice little monologue at the beginning a couple weeks back, and I explained when I'm saying the media, the people, the organizations I am referring to are most mainstream cable news based outlets. Okay. Just to be clear, have covered a lot of the quote unquote developments in the Mueller probe. Of which there really haven't been that many from the start, given the amount of time that's lapsed, and I think it's almost that we spend so much time on each development that people are getting kind of worn out by this. Yeah, it's none of it's the juicy stuff, so to speak, the final findings. So, the big question we're looking at here, Lance, do you think that this is actually, regardless of what the findings are, okay? So say there's nothing significant, or say every conspiracy theory is right and the president, was directly in cahoots with Russia. Just that, either scenario, does that actually change anybody's minds? Does it make any sort of difference?
I really don't think so. I think everybody's pretty much where they are and will stay there. I think though it's going to happen, that might happen though, is that it chips away at Trump's autonomy. And I really think, to tie the two things together, and that is the Republicans were afraid to stand up to him during the first 2 years. But I think we're going to see some bipartisan legislation come out of the House and Congress, or out of the House and Senate, and go to the president's desk. And I will find it very interesting to see whether or not the president actually vetoes something that has bipartisan support. And I say that because I don't think the Republicans are as fearful of Trump's power with the base as they were, as they've been the last 2 years. And the Mueller probe could further chip away at that. That's what I'm saying. And I'm going to find it very interesting. The first couple of pieces of legislation that make it to the president's desk, will he sign them or veto them? Will he stand alone? Because he really doesn't want to stand alone. As you said, he throws stuff out there, and if it doesn't stick and he gets some repercussions, he backs off. Will he truly stand alone in the face of bipartisan legislation and veto it because it's not what his base wants? That, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I really hope that happens, because I don't have an answer as to which way it'll go. But I think that's the effect of the Mueller probe, is not to change anybody's mind, but if it comes out that there's that I just think it's going to chip away at the president's power over his party.
Okay, Mike, what do we got here? Do you think it makes a difference?
With the Mueller probe, I just wish that it would get wrapped up. Whatever you've got, let's get it out there. Let's see what it is. You've had plenty of time, it seems like to me, to get this taken care of, and it just keeps going on and on and on. I know there, with stuff that has come out with Cohen and with Flynn and everything, that there's got to be something there to it. I'm just not sure as far as with the president exactly what they have. I'd like to see what they have. And then I don't know, whether charges will be brought, whether there will be an indictment that is coming, or I don't know. I'd like to see it finished so that we could get back to governing, as far as from the House and the Senate and the presidency. And, but what I see, especially now, even with the stuff with border, security and getting the wall, I knew that whenever I said something before about, with Pelosi and Schuler and President Trump sitting down, and he said he would take, full responsibility. Well, now that full responsibility, he's passing it on to Pelosi, and it's the blame game. They'll just keep going back and forth. Well, we couldn't get this done because, hey, they put this in there or they did this. And that's what I see for the next 2 years. I hope that things change, but I don't see it changing because.
So the probe just gets kind of turned into that then. Yeah. Ultimately, is regardless of the findings, one side or the other is going to say, well, it wasn't actually this, or it wasn't actually that. It was
this witch hunt, or it was, it was this. There, what facts did you have? And I like I said, I'm just getting tired of all the rhetoric and all the name calling and finger pointing and all that sort of stuff. Let's let's get on with it.
So Lance, this is a good opportunity as we got some good thoughts there from Mike. Tell us, what is TrueChat and the State of Us working to do here?
Well, our mission, if you haven't listened before, is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations.
Yeah. And if you
don't think we're doing that,
yeah,
you can contact
ethics@truechat.org. Yeah, send an email, ethics@truechat.org. Let us know. The committee will take a look and they'll give Lance and I a slap on the wrist if we need it. So, and they might even take more aggressive action, right? If it's that bad. So it
might take my water away from me.
The great idea, right? The media will keep the politicians accountable and the people will keep the media accountable. But it only works if you participate. So you gotta be part of this process. Now, on the other hand, if you think that, we're just all idiots today and none of us said anything right, or you think, Mike's the greatest and just give him a solo show and get rid of Lance and I, you can let us know all of those thoughts at TrueChat.org, Twitter, Facebook, pretty much all social media. Get engaged in the conversation and let us know your thoughts on our topics today. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit. The next thing was Parkland shooting, opioid suicide on the rise. Basically, this sums up into that life expectancy for Americans continues to fall. That's right, it's decreasing due to a number of factors. Now, one of those is we have an aging population, more so than in the past. You have particularly the boomers right now moving into that retirement age. And as we have that, there's increasing healthcare costs and more people dying than there has been in recent times. So the point of all this, though, what I want to underscore is that the two groups that are seeing the highest increase in deaths due to opioids and suicide is young people. And as two individuals who worked with young people their entire lives, I'm just wondering if you guys, we don't have a lot of time because we got to move on, but in a 30-second wrap, can you give me the biggest challenge that young people are facing today? What is the thing that we have to address? You don't have to tell me exactly what we have to do about it, but what do we got to focus on? Because these are just two of them. I mean, there's a lot, right? So maybe it's one of these, maybe it's not. You want to go first, Lance?
Sure. Very simply, we have to give young people the tools to deal with failure. We have to quit telling them that everything's going to be all right and everything's going to happen in a positive manner in their life. And we need to give them the tools to which to handle the failures or the roadblocks that they're going to get in life. And I think that's one area that we've been failing as a society, parents, schools, everybody, is that we've tried to take away failure, and that's just not reality. There are times where you're not going to get what you want. No matter how hard you work or what you do, it's not going to happen for you. And we're sending and we're not giving young people the tools to deal with when that happens. And so then they turn to alternative things because we haven't given them a good toolbox to deal with that. And so that's my number one. It's been something I've talked about on different shows with you, is that failure is going to happen. And rather than trying to protect them from failure, we need to give them the tools to deal with setbacks.
I agree with what Lance said, but one of the things in my years of being in the classroom that I've seen just steadily deteriorate is just respect for authority figures, respect for any type of, like whenever kids get in trouble or kids have problems or whatever, the way that they react. And I think that's a societal issue. Whenever you start looking at how things go in government and name calling and the bullying that takes place in government, and I know you said something as far as Parkland and all that, I just think it comes down to a respect factor. Do you respect others? Do you respect, being able to sit down with someone that has a different opinion and talk through it? That doesn't happen in society anymore. You have people that have their their extreme views, and I try, especially in my classroom, to try and get people to talk to one another instead of yell at one another. If you talk to one another, maybe you hear something that somebody else has to say. And to me, that's something that I've seen just steadily over the years decline. And there's a lot of different ways you can look at the idea of respect. So
you handle failure better if you have more respect, and maybe you fail less if you're a little more respectful of others and you're working together. So
there you go.
It's hard to go through life all alone with nobody on your side. And if you're going to be mean to everybody, it's pretty tough to ever get anybody who's standing beside you. And that's, having, been a young person, having still being a young person, there's a lot, but I like that those are both kind of higher level things, and obviously, echoing a lot of what TrueChat's mission is about, and what we're trying to do, which is prove that those types of conversations are possible. That it doesn't have to be this screaming match. So immigration tensions continue. When are we going to stop spending time on this? So I'll say a quick piece here, and then you guys can just tell me if you've got anything to add. Lance and I have been over it a million times from pretty much every angle, and I think we're both getting tired of talking about it because it's just the same thing again and again and again, which is that two super important things to know. Number one, these are reports that came out earlier this year, so they're very fresh. You can go listen to our full episodes on this, but it boils down to, first thing, we have net negative immigration. What does that mean? It means that more people leave the U.S., and I'm not talking about citizens, just people. Okay, more people exit the United States than are immigrating to the United States. So the notion that we have an immigration problem in regards to mass influx of people, that's not really accurate according to population trends. Again, these are government figures, so you don't like it, you can talk to the Trump administration because they're figures that were released by his government. Number two is that if we're serious about wanting to curb the problems, which I don't think lumping them into the immigration thing is necessarily fair. The illegal drug trade, sex trafficking, those things really aren't immigration per se. They are illegal activities by individuals who, whether it's the United States or Mexico or Canada, they mean to make money in ways that these countries don't see as legal. That said, of the drug trade, which is frequently cited as a reason that we need to build a wall or crack down on immigration, or however you want to put it, about 80% comes by sea, not by land. Also, the Coast Guard, who is responsible for patrolling that, is several times more effective than our land-based border patrol. And that's not, they have way better people. It's a difference in their ability to collect and have access to intelligence and their ability to effectively hunt down these sea-based operations. So I'm all for more money to cutting down illegal drug trade, and especially, sex trafficking and things like that. But we need to be smart about where it goes. And I think we're missing a huge part of the debate, which is that most of it comes by sea. So we got to quit talking about a wall right now, because that's not where the bulk of the problem is. We can take that same money, make a big difference for the Coast Guard, and get them some frickin' ships that aren't 50 years old. You've got one ship, Mike, one ship that is responsible for an area the size of the continental United States. Okay, so just like in your head a minute, one ship to patrol that entire sea, and it's 48 years old. So it's got super old tech, and it's got a patrol an area that's just not reasonable. I mean, you can't, one ship? No. So major problems there with where our priorities and I think the conversation is headed with this. I'm not saying there isn't a problem. We've talked a lot about the immigration system has to be overhauled because there are problems with it. But I think the drug thing is separate. We talk about it like it's one and the same, and it's a different thing. And there's a clear way to address it where we can be really effective with the money we're putting in. Anything else to add, Lance or Mike?
Well, one of the things that I noticed, you said the Trump government. I don't I hate that reference. It's our government. And I think we need to do something because, and that is a totally different topic, but we need to do something as far as sparking that change. One of the things that, and this is just a general question. I'd like Lance's response here. What should we be doing at the border? Do we need more border security? Should we just allow it? We have this, as far as all these migrants that were coming, with this caravan, should we just have allowed them in? I'm interested on your take.
Well, I'm for open borders. So, I mean, it's the history of our country. There aren't too many people here. You look at the number of jobs that aren't being filled. We have a concentration of people along the coast because that's where the jobs are and the security is. But people aren't coming here. I mean, I know that's the fact, and people want to say, well, what do we do with these people? Okay. Well, I don't have a problem stopping people and checking them. And if their paperwork's in place and they're not criminals in their home countries or whatever, to let them in, because that's how America was great, is great, is because we're diverse and we've let people in. If you're not a Native American, if you're not an Indian, the native people, whatever term you want to use, we've all come here through immigration and as part of the American dream and what we can achieve once we get here. This closing the borders so that we can protect the people that are already here, I think is a misnomer that we play on the public to make them feel safe and to say, see, I'm looking out for you, when we're not dealing with the problem that the money issue is the problem in the United States, that the minimum wage should be about $15, $16 an hour. And if you do all of those things and you quit letting the 1% rule the 99% and you get some pay equity out there, then you solve all of these problems. But it's a lot easier to stay rich and blame the immigrants, quote, the immigrants that are coming in. That's why you're not making any money. That's why you can't achieve the American dream. The fact that we haven't raised the minimum wage, that, the minimum wage that Mike, you and I grew up with in the mid 70s and worked for $3.35 an hour or whatever it was, is now the equivalent to $17.75 an hour. So we could make it on minimum wage. We could go to school, make minimum wage and pay student loans. Yeah, it was tough, but we could do it. We're asking people now, young people, to do that on almost half of what we were earning. So it's not doable. And so instead we have to find somebody to blame these problems on. So we'll blame it on the immigrants. And I think immigration is not the problem. And I have no problem with open borders and let everybody in and let's compete. Competition, competition, competition. Capitalism, that's America. We need to compete. And to compete, you need to have open borders. You can't close your borders and say, gee, I deserve a job because I got here first. No, go out and work, but pay people for what they should be making, not so that multinational corporations can be raking in all of this money. And we're going to have to go over because I just ranted. So, but he asked me the question. Sorry.
I felt it coming. I was like, it's just the same thing. Lance and I have talked about everything he highlighted
and
there.
I appreciate, and I'm glad you asked, and I appreciate you responding, but I'll throw it back to our host here and let him decide what he wants to do time wise.
There's just, Lance and I have done, I don't know, probably on everything you just mentioned there, we've got at least 10, 20 episodes in the can this year that cover this stuff in detail, that explain to people that it's not that the things that we're talking about can't be seen as something that we maybe should address. It's just that we seem to be missing so many of the things that are easy, simple fixes, like you say, for example, the minimum wage. Or when we do talk about things like the minimum wage, people don't give you the argument that Lance just gave you, which is, no, I was making, proportionally, I was making almost twice what you're making. The people who are advocating for it focus on completely the wrong things, which generally speaking is this, it's wrong to be wealthy thing, which again, you can have that debate all by itself, but that doesn't get people to agree to do it. That just offends people and I hate to break it to you, but the people that you need on board to change that stuff typically are at least some of the wealthy people. So it's just we fight these battles the wrong way, and we spend time on things that, again, with the immigration debate, you know, the drugs and the rapists and all this stuff. Yeah, yes. Are those a problem? But they're not coming by land. So here we go again. We're down this, you know, rabbit hole where we're talking about the wrong thing, or we're spending time on things rather that don't deserve the amount of time we give them when there's a different angle that warrants more time. That's how I'd sum it up on the immigration thing, is just we're addressing it in the wrong manner.
I just don't think, you know, you said something about the easy things as far as with that. What about the hard things? What about gun control? What about reasonable gun control? Are we going to be able to take all the guns? Are we going to be able to do all of these different things? No. But what do? We wind up basically right back with the same conversation. We probably had this conversation 5 or 6 years ago, and we're in the same spot. And that's something, you know, being in education and looking at all the violence that has happened in our schools. And we are no closer to a solution now than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever you had Columbine. And that's something, again, you have the extreme right, the extreme left, and nobody looking out for what should be done. We need some way for people to sit down and get rid of partisan stuff, get rid of all these fringes and everything else, and get stuff done. Can we have reasonable immigration laws? Can we have, you know, gun control? Can we have, or something, just so our kids feel safe going into the classrooms?
I say the easy thing, and I guess the disconnect here that I think happens is, for the three of us, the notion of you have to compromise to get anywhere, that's just like common sense. But for whatever reason, and there's a lot of them, that's not the motto that most of us seem to focus on. So doing the hard things, I think, is the accepting that you can't have all of what you want, that you're going to have to take it in steps. And it would be better, you know, for example, on the immigration thing, to do a little something as opposed to what we're doing right now, which is nothing, you know, or on the minimum wage thing, it'd be better to at least move it in the right direction. I told Lance about, you know, a plan that if small towns increase their minimum wage, not to what it needs to be, which is 17, but even just to 12, and allowed a tax abatement for businesses to offset that cost, that's at least it's moving in the right direction, instead of, again, where we are now, which is we just not addressing the problem, or we're addressing it by just talking it to death and not actually saying, okay, well, what are we going to do?
And that comes to the philosophy of Ronald Reagan, where, okay, if I can only get 40% of what I want right now, I'll take it in that piece of legislation. And then, okay, now I still want 60%. Okay, a year later, I get a bill where I get another 20% of what I wanted. Now I have 40%, but it gets you off dead center. And we don't have that anymore, where somebody's willing to take less than what they're asking for to move the bar. And that's what I think Mike is saying. And what we've talked about before is that you can't be all or nothing. If you can get something that will improve things for the American people, then you take it. Even if it doesn't improve it as much as you want, you take it. And then you address it again 4 or 5 years down the road or whatever, and then you move it. And then we wouldn't be in the same spot in 2018 as we were with Columbine. We would have made some movement, and we've made some, but we haven't made as much as we would all like to have seen. But it's because we're going to go all or nothing. We're either going to let everybody have everything, or we're going to take everything away from them, instead of let's move to some normal, some ideas that we could all get behind, and let's just take what we can agree on. And then if we had done that over the last 20 years, we'd be a lot closer to a solution than we are now. And that was President Reagan's philosophy, is that I will take what I can get now and I'll go back after more later. And we haven't done that. And I think that addresses a lot of what Mike brought up.
One of the things, just, you said something about the media and how you're talking about the media. I am so tired of the way the media portrays things and how they report things, I just was watching a report this morning and they're calling what President Trump is doing as far as like labeling it childish or labeling it this or whatever. And okay, that appeals to their base. And then you go and you look, you go to Fox or you go to another, well, then they're going to do things that will appeal to their base because, hey, that's what's getting them ratings. And and I struggle now to try and find just news. Just report the news to me. Let me make something, make my own decisions. I saw a book earlier with Walter Cronkite. Hey, report the news to me. Let me make my own decisions on it. Don't give me your spin. Don't give me all the crap that goes along with it. I want to be able to make up my own mind. And that's going back to what I was saying before. It is our government. It is time for us to be, holding their feet to the fire and making them get something done instead of the same old, same old. That's what is frustrating.
There was a journalist the other day from the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, I don't remember which, and they outlined it perfectly. I think the problem that's faced is it's expensive to do the news. It's cheap to put 4 people, 5 people, 8 people around a table and bash, and like you said, the cheaper option yields better ratings, because people are just getting what they already believe reinforced. And, you take MSNBC and you got 4 liberals there, and then they bring on this one poor conservative and they make him look like an idiot. And then the same thing on Fox. You got these 4 conservatives, you bring on this one poor liberal and you make him look like an idiot. And all that does is then reinforce the ideology of the people, like you said, who are already watching the platform. It doesn't stretch them. It doesn't make them think about things in a critical way. And that's why my biggest tip, at the beginning of this year, I released an article in the Huffington Post. I published an article entitled, what was it called, Lance? Something about print media. Anyway, see, that's great. I can't even remember what it's called, but something like the value of print and why we need it. That's where Lance and I base most of the information we get. I'm not saying the papers are perfect, and you don't even have to get the physical paper. I did a separate article on why that matters, the physical paper. But even if you just subscribe to sources that are primarily written as opposed to televised, there's just such a broader plethora of information that you have access to. And for the most part, you talk about organizations like the Times and the Journal. They have their editorial section, and I won't pretend that their editorial sections don't have clear leanings and biases. But for the most part, I think they've got a lot of honest to God journalists at those organizations who are trying in the news section to do a good job of writing stories that give you a perspective of what's going on and not an opinion about what's wrong with what's going on. So that'd be, Lance knows. See, now you had him on his little rant thing about immigration and education. You get me going on the media.
Well, I appreciate the fact that, like the 3 of us have been able to sit here and talk and listen to one another. And have, I call it in my classroom, we can have civil discourse. We can talk about things. It's all right to have a difference of opinion. And it's, maybe, if you just sit and listen, maybe you can learn something. And that's not what you see. That's, we have to me, it's almost like entertainment media where they are trying to get the ratings. It's not this type of thing as far as putting a panel like this together on CNN. They want to have people that are just going to sit on one side and scream at the other. And I'm just, like I said, I'm tired of that sort of thing. And it's come down to that 24-hour news network. They got to put something on there to get ratings. And it just drives me crazy. And like I said, trying to find some place where you can go and get the news. Like I said, let people make their own decisions, make their own judgments on things. That's what I miss.
This opinion and commercial was brought to you by Mike Mays. It is not with TrueChat. But if you would like to get if you agree with Mike, please check out our shows on the State of Us with TrueChat, because this is exactly as he stated what we do 3 days a week. So
that's right.
I'm not trying to be facetious with it, but the reality is that this is what we do. And you said it. We try to get together and just present the news. And then we try to come up with a solution every once in a while. If we were in charge, this is what we would do. But basically, folks, this is just what's going on. What do you think we should do about it?
Just the last thing I'll mention here is the U.S.-China relations. The trade war continues. So we'll keep watching that in the coming year. Of course, Lance and I will try to keep you up to date on what's going on there.
Hey, we've got one more show before the end of the year.
We do.
So we do. Phil, put those in there somewhere.
I think it's entitled China Rules on Monday, right? So we've got a year in review thing kind of where we talk about what we want to focus on next year. But of course, there'll be a topic. So tune in Monday because maybe we'll do the China thing then. Syria and the Middle East were a big thing, I think, overlooked until the last couple of weeks. Just as an FYI, Today is day 2,845 of the Syrian civil war, which started March 15th of 2011 and has claimed at least 450,000 deaths, although most experts say that number is incredibly low and it could be as much as double that. One of the worst human atrocities since the Holocaust, and we haven't come up with a great answer to that one yet. So big thing that was overlooked. The other thing, nolabels.org, changes to the House rules and the speakership. They have a thing there that you can download that's called the Speaker Project, and it's a little booklet. You download it, it's free, and it'll walk you through all this stuff that we were talking about, the changes that are coming and the work they're doing. And, are they perfect? No, they're not. But they're trying and they're doing something, and that's more than we can say for most. So go over there, check them out, and see maybe how you can get involved. And of course, we always advocate contacting congress.com. If you're not sure how to get in touch with your congressman, your representatives, that's how you get it done. Contacting congress.com. Lance, if people want to listen, how can they do so?
They can get us on Spotify, on what else we got? We got Stitcher.
Yep.
Anywhere that you can get any fine Apple Podcasts, which my girls didn't know that. And I said, come on. They said, if we can get it on Apple, we'd have been listening. And I'm like, yeah, get on there and listen to your old man. They go, yeah, we've already heard this stuff for 30 years, Dad. We don't need to, but Apple Podcasts. So there you go.
That's right. All the places fine podcasts are found. And if you'd like to connect with us, tell us what you thought of today's show and how great we were or how bad we were at TrueChat.org, Twitter, Facebook. We invite the conversation, and that includes if you disagree with us. We're willing to take that stuff on, so please let us know your thoughts. For the State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
And I'm Mike Mays.
Thanks again to Mike for being on today, and always a thanks to Lance for being here. And we'll see you next time on The State of Us. Be the change.